I'm your host, Carolyn Morrison, and during this episode of Mysteries of the Church, we will be looking into the canonization process. There are hundreds of thousands of people recognized to be saints according to the Catholic Church, but to the average Christian, it remains a mystery as to how someone is declared a saint. During this episode, I'll be walking you through the steps of canonization, and we will explore some of the amazing miracles following the lives of a saint. According to Catholic law, a person cannot be venerated unless there is proof of a life of heroic sanctity. Canonization is a long process that authorizes the intercession and veneration of a saint based on testimonial proof that they are worthy.
It's a very simple question to ask, who is a saint or what makes a person a saint? But the answer is a tad bit more complicated than the question.
I would like to think that there are billions of saints, but my sense is that that's probably wishful thinking.
I think we need to look at least two basic facts or aspects or insights in the Catholic faith in order to come up with the answer. So the very first is the whole question of what holiness is, because obviously a saint is a person of extraordinary holiness. But what does it mean to be holy?
Well, there are various types of saints. Martyrs are one, confessors, virgins, founders of religious orders, and so on. Saints are individuals with whom we hold communion of some sort. That is to say, Catholics believe in a communion of the living and the dead, which we profess at Mass. And so the living are intimately connected with the saints.
Most of the earliest saints were martyrs. And that was a natural consequence of the fact that it was a crime in ancient Rome to be a Christian.
The very first recognized martyr ever was Saint Stephen. He was one of the first 7 deacons. Some Jewish religious authority made false accusations against him. They claimed he was preaching blasphemy against Moses and God. This was a crime punishable by death. And at his trial, he rebuked the judges, saying they were murderers of Jesus. Enraging the crowd, Stephen was brought outside and stoned to death, making him the first martyr and subsequently the first saint in history.
My sense is that Stephen's martyrdom sets a pattern for all future martyrs insofar as he takes words basically straight out of Jesus' mouth and asks for forgiveness of those who are stoning him to death.
And because of their courage and because of the sanctity of their life and their willingness to give everything over to Christ in that great supreme act of martyrdom, then certainly they were venerated from the beginning, honored as great saints.
When the canonization process came into play, Ulrich of Augsburg was declared the first canonized saint in 993. Since then, no one has been venerated as a saint without the approval of a pope.
Later on in the Church's life, though, some local bishops began to recognize what we call now the confessors, that people who were not martyred for the faith, but lived extraordinary lives of holiness, died holy deaths with tremendous, what we call peace, who testified either through their writings, or through their teachings, or through their actions, authentic Christian faith. And they oftentimes were recognized as saints by local bishops, because as you know, there wasn't television, there weren't newspapers. So a community knew this person lived with them, worked with them, taught them, died with them. And the local bishop would have recognized and decreed this person is to be honored as a saint.
Canonization begins when a request is made to consider someone as a saint. the request isn't made until at least 5 years after the candidate has passed away. In some cases, requests have been made up to 50 years after death. The people who make such requests are usually groups belonging to the candidate's church or community, and they are referred to as acta causae. The request is directed to the bishop of the diocese where the person had died. Along with this request, the group must present testimony of the person's dedication to God and their exceptional living. The bishop will decide if the evidence is compelling enough to present the request to Rome, and if that is the case, he asks the Congregation for the Causes of Saints for permission to begin investigating the life of the person in question. Once granted that permission, the bishop will open a tribunal and invites witnesses to describe the person's life. A report called the Positio is translated into Italian and sent to Rome by the bishop in a step called the apostolic process. There it is presented to the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, and 9 theologians scrutinize the document. If the congregation approves, then the head of the congregation, called the prefect, authorizes the servant of God to be considered venerable.
These are individuals who, by all accounts, led exemplary, very holy lives, were totally loyal to the church, and the end result of their kind of lifestyle suggested to other people that they're worthy of emulation. In the first millennia, you have numerous untold, unnamed individuals who fall into this category. And if someone is recognized at the local level for carrying on a holy life in this manner, they were by default considered a saint. In the second millennia, we begin to find a number of rules, both at the local level and at the universal level of the church, given by the Pope, in which not everyone who comes down the pike and who lives a holy life can be considered a saint. There are even more narrow parameters for determining that.
When we return, we will explore the investigation of miracles linked to servants of God that determine whether or not they can, in fact, be canonized.